Welcome to Dental Business Made Simple. Now, here's your host, Coach Matt Doherty.
I'm back. I'm really glad you're here today. Before we dive in, I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with it for a second rather than just moving past it. When's the last time you took a real vacation? Not a conference. No, that doesn't count. Not a long weekend where you checked your messages every few hours. A real, full, disconnected vacation where your practice ran without you and you felt completely at ease about it. If you had to think hard about that, or if the honest answer was, I'm not sure I ever had, then this episode is for you. Today, we're talking about owner dependence. What is it? What it costs you financially and personally? And most importantly, what you can do about it. This is one of the most important conversations I have with practice owners, and I want to give it the time it deserves today. So let's get to it. Let's start with a clear definition, because I find that a lot of dentists know something feels off but haven't named it precisely. Owner dependence means your practice is structured so that its success depends primarily on your presence, your decisions, your relationships, and yes, your production. Not on systems, not on a team operating at a high level, not on documented processes or a strong culture, on you. And here's the thing about that. It does not always look like a problem from the outside. In fact, it often looks like success. The patients love you. They request you specifically. They refer their friends and family because of you. Your production numbers are strong. Your team respects you. When something goes wrong, people come to you and you fix it. That feels great. It feels like you've built something. You're important. But what actually you've built is a role, not a business. There's a critical difference between those things. Let me repeat it. What you've actually built is a role, not a business. A role requires your presence to function. A business has systems, people, and a culture that allows you to function regardless of whether you're here or there. Okay, I've called it the organizational triangle, and we've discussed that in the past. Think about the practices you admire most. The one that seems to run smoothly, attract strong associates, maintain excellent patient experiences, and command strong valuations. Those practices are not successful because the owner works harder than everyone else. They're successful because the owner built something that works beyond themselves. That is the goal. And the owner dependence is an obstacle standing between where you are and where you want to be. Let me give you a quick diagnostic. I call it a 30-day test. Ask yourself, if I had to step away from my practice for 30 days, starting tomorrow, what would break? All right. This is basically called a stress test. Okay. Stress test your business. Would production drop significantly because your chair is empty? Would team conflicts go unresolved because no one else could make decisions? Would patients reschedule or leave because they only want to see you? Would vendors, insurance companies, and referral partners fall out of communication? Would your team feel paralyzed without your direction? The more things that break, the more owner-dependent your practice is. And this is not a judgment. It's a starting point. Because once you know what breaks, you know where exactly to build. Now, here's what I want you to understand. Owner dependence is not a character flaw. It's not evidence that you're a bad leader or a poor business person. It's almost always a predictable result of how dental careers are built. Think about the training process. You spend years, sometimes a decade, developing an extraordinary high level of clinical skill. You learn to trust your hands, your eyes, your judgment. And the entire educational model is built around individual excellence. You succeed by being the best individual performer in the room. And then you open or acquire a practice, and suddenly the game changes completely. Now, success requires something entirely different. It requires you to multiply your impact through other people, to build systems that carry your standards even when you are not in the room, to lead a team, manage a business, and develop a culture. No one taught you that. And because you are smart and capable, you default to what you know. You work harder, you do it yourself, you stay in control. And that works for a while. It gets you through the early years when you've got crazy energy. It builds the foundation, but eventually becomes the ceiling. I see this consistently in my work with high-performing leaders across all industries. The behaviors and mindsets that create early success become the barriers to the next level of success. The dentist who built a thriving practice by outworking everyone, by being the one who handles it all, by keeping tight control over every detail. That same dentist hits a wall when it's time to scale, step back, or eventually sell, because the practice was built around a person, not a platform. There's a psychological piece here that I think is important to name directly. Many high-achieving dentists get real psychological reward from being needed. When patients ask for you specifically, when your team says, we don't know what we'd do without you, when every problem gets solved because you showed up, that feels meaningful. It confirms that you matter, that you're essential. But there's a difference between being valued and being indispensable in a way that limits everyone around you. The best leaders, the ones who build the most lasting and valuable organizations, understand that their highest contribution is not doing the work themselves. It's building the environment where the work gets done excellently without them. That's a mindset shift, and it's not easy, but it's the shift that separates practice owners from practice builders. Let's talk money, because I want to be direct with you about financial consequences of owner dependence. When a buyer, whether that's a DSO or a private equity-backed group or individual dentists, evaluate your practice, one of the very first things they assess is what we call transferability. Can this practice succeed under new ownership? And the honest answer to that question depends almost entirely on how owner-dependent your practice is. Here's what buyers are looking for. They want to see revenue that is not tied exclusively to the owner's chair. They want patient relationships that are connected to the practice, not just one person. They want systems that are documented and repeatable. They want a team that can operate at a high level with leadership, not just with the direction from the owner. They want proof that the practice can survive a transition. When they don't see those things, two things happen. One, the perceived risk goes up, and two, you guessed it, the valuation goes down. This is not theoretical. I've spoken with practice owners who were shocked when they received a valuation significantly lower than they expected, not because of their production numbers, but because the practice was deemed too dependent on the owner to be considered a stable acquisition. And this goes across all industries. Banks are looking at the same things. Lenders financing a practice acquisition want to know that their investment's protected. If the answer to what happens when the current owner leaves is, we're not sure, well, that uncertainty is priced into the deal, or it kills the deal entirely. And let's talk about the one more financial consequence that doesn't get enough attention. Your own earning potential while you're still in the practice. Owner-dependent practices have a growth ceiling. When everything roots through you, your capacity becomes the practice's capacity. There are only so many hours in a day. There are only so many patients you can see. There are only so many decisions you can make. And when you're the bottleneck, growth stalls. The practices that scale that open second locations, that build associate models that actually work, that see consistent year-over-year growth. Those practices are led by owners who figured out how to get out of their own way. They built leverage. They built systems. They developed teams that could execute at a high level without requiring the owner's presence in every moment. That's not just good leadership, it's good business strategy. We've talked about what owner dependence cost you financially. Now let's talk about what it cost you personally, because I think this part often gets minimized, and it should not. Vacations feel risky. That is the phrase I hear most often. Not vacations are impossible or vacations are too expensive. Vacations feel risky. That word risky tells you everything. It means that stepping away feels like a threat to something you've built. It means that rest and recovery, which are not luxuries, but genuine leadership necessities, come with a sense of danger attached to them. That's not sustainable. And over time, it is not just uncomfortable, it's damaging. OMJ Clothing is an elite men's clothing store that provides a vast array of spectacular brands of men's lifestyle apparel for every day. Elevate your business upscale casual at OMJ. Success comes from standing out. Burnout in dentistry is real, and it's a serious issue. The physical demands of the work are significant, but the mental load of running a business while delivering clinical care is enormous. And when you add the weight of feeling like everything depends on you, that load becomes crushing. I wrote about this in my book, Rebound from Pain to Passion. The leaders who hit the wall hardest are often the ones who never learn to separate the identity from their output. When your sense of worth is tied to being indispensable, taking a break feels like failure. Delegating feels like losing control. Trusting your team feels like a risk you can't afford. But here's the reality. The most resilient leaders that I've worked with, the ones who sustain high performance over decades, not just years, are the ones who learn to build recovery into their leadership model. They take real vacations, they disconnect, they trust their teams, and when they come back, they're sharper, more creative, and more effective. This is not weakness, it's strategy. Your practice should not require your suffering to succeed. If it does, that is not a badge of honor. It's a design flaw. And it is one that you have the power to fix. All right, let's get practical, because everything I've described so far is only useful if it leads somewhere actionable. I'm all about action, getting better today. So let me walk you through a framework for beginning to break owner dependence in your practice. Let's call it a 4-part build beyond yourself model, BBY. Part one, identify the bottlenecks. You cannot fix what you've not clearly diagnosed. You're a doctor, you know that. So the first step, spend 1 full week tracking every decision that comes to you, every question your team asks, every patient complaint that escalates to you, every administrative problem that lands on your plate, every clinical situation where someone says, let me check with the doctor. Write them all down. At the end of the week, you'll have a clear picture of where the bottlenecks are. And I promise you, patterns will emerge. The same types of questions, the same types of situations, the same categories of decisions that only you are empowered to make. That list is your roadmap. Those are the areas where systems, training, and delegation will create the most impact. All right, let's go to part 2. Document and systemize. Document and systemize. Once you know what's routing through you, your job is to take that knowledge out of your head and put it somewhere the team can access it. This is where many practice owners get stuck, because it feels like it takes more time than just handling it yourself. I feel that all the time. It's faster for me to do it. In the short term, that's true. but you're not optimizing for this week. You're optimizing for the next 10 years. Start with the things that come up most frequently. Create simple, clear protocols. Document your decision-making criteria. Build reference materials your team can use when a situation arises and you're not immediately available. It does not have to be elaborate. It just has to be clear. A one-page protocol that your team actually uses is worth 100 times more than a comprehensive manual that sits on the shelf. Part 3, develop your team's decision-making capacity. Here's a hard truth that I want to say with respect. If your team cannot make good decisions without you, that's a leadership problem. That's not a team problem. Strong teams are built, not found. They need context. They need clear expectations. They need the opportunity to practice making decisions. How about that? Practice making decisions. You run a dental practice. Leadership is a practice. They need to include the freedom to occasionally get it wrong and learn from it. Failure is a great teacher. It's like in sports. You miss shots. Golfers miss short putts. You learn from it and get better through practice. One of the most powerful things you can do as a practice owner is to shift from being the person who gives the answers to being the person who develops other people's ability to find answers. All right? That's leadership. That's transformational leadership. When a team member comes to you with a problem, before you solve it, ask them, what would you do? What do you think we should do? What options do you see? What do you recommend? That simple shift begins to build a culture of ownership on your team. And it slowly but consistently reduces the number of things that need to come to you. Over time, you want to build leaders within your practice. A strong office manager who can handle operational decisions. A lead assistant or hygienist who can manage clinical workflow. A patient coordinator who can handle complex scheduling and financial conversations. These are not just job titles. They're leverage points that free you to operate at the highest level. Part 4, change the story you're telling yourself. This is the part that doesn't show up on a business plan, but determines whether everything else actually works. Many dentists hold the belief, often unconsciously, that letting go means losing control. That if they delegate, quality will suffer. That if they step back, things will fall apart. That the practice's success is dependent on their personal involvement in everything. That belief will undermine every system you build and every person you develop, because you will always find a reason to step back in. The shift you need to make is this. Your job is not to be the best person in the room. Your job is to make the room the best it can be. Your job is to set the standard, build the culture, develop people, and create the environment where excellence happens consistently, with or without your physical presence. That is a harder job than being a great clinician. It requires different skills. It requires a different mindset. But it's the job that creates the kind of practice and the kind of life that most dentists got into the profession to have. I want to zoom out for a moment before we close. When I work with executives and leaders across industries, one of the first questions I ask is this: what do you want this to look like in 10 years? Well, I want to ask you the same question. In 10 years, what do you want your relationship with your practice to look like? Do you want to still be the one holding everything together? Or do you want to have built something that gives you choices about how much you want to work, choices about when you want to step back, choices about how and when you want to transition out? The practices that give their owners the most freedom are the ones where the owner dependence was addressed intentionally and early on. not in the final years before a sale, but throughout the life of the practice as a core part of how the business was built. Every system you build now is a brick in that foundation. Every person you develop is an asset that compounds over time. Every decision you push down to your team is an investment in a culture of ownership that will pay dividends for years. You got into dentistry to do meaningful work, to serve patients, to build something of your own. Owner dependence does not protect that vision. It threatens it. Because a practice that cannot run without you is a practice that's always one unexpected event, one illness, one family emergency away from crisis. Building beyond yourself is not caring less about your practice. It's about caring enough to build it in a way that lasts. Let me leave you with this. The most valuable practices I have seen are not the ones with the highest production or the most patience. They're the ones where the owner built something bigger than themselves, where the systems are strong, the team is capable, and the culture is clear. And the practice functions at a high level, whether the owner is in the building or on a beach somewhere. That's not a fantasy. That's a leadership outcome. And it's available to you. Start with a 30-day test. Identify what breaks. Pick one thing. Build one system. Develop one person. And then do it again. You did not become a dentist to be trapped. You became a dentist to build something. So let's build it the right way. If today's episode connected with something you've been feeling in your practice, I'd love to hear from you. Share this with a colleague who needs it. And then when you're ready to go deeper on building the kind of practice and leadership identity that gives you real freedom, visit me at dohertycoaching.com. That's DOHERTY coaching.com. Until next time, learn and grow.